Hello and welcome to the OTB channel. Well, it's that time of year again, and I don't normally jump on this bandwagon, but it's been 12 months since I've looked at an Ubuntu release. I looked at the 2004, the LTS release, and I was just interested to see what's been done since then. And as you're probably aware, if you follow this at all, you'll know that all the Ubuntu distros were released in the last week or so. And I thought, well, let's go and have another look at Ubuntu Mate and see how it's come on. So love it or hate it, that's what we're going to do today. See you after the intro. Okay, welcome back. So, Ubuntu Mate. I am always a little bit loath to jump on the review all the Ubuntus thing that a lot of the reviewers do, because there's a 6-month release cycle and they're forever coming out. And so I tend to avoid it. And I last looked at Ubuntu Mate 12 months ago when the LTS version was released. But this time I just thought, Hirsute Hippo, the hairy hippo, I just want to have a look and want to see where we're up to. So that's what I'm going to do today. And I think I should just kind of preempt that by giving my thoughts about Ubuntu to start off with, because it seems to have evolved into the sort of distro where people either love it or hate it. We get these reviewers talking about Ubuntu is evil and all the rest of it. I don't really subscribe to any of that. I've used Ubuntu a lot in the past. I started off all the way back, was it 2004 with the Warty Warthog? And it really, to my mind, laid the foundations for what the Linux desktop was going to be. Just in the fact that compared to everything else that was out there, it was groundbreaking. It was installable by an ordinary person without, a IT developer's degree. You could follow along and it made sense. And of course, that was the whole emphasis that was originally put on it, that it was Ubuntu for human beings. I always thought that the sludge brown theme was a little bit of a strange choice, but it had enough to recommend it that I stuck with it for many years. And it did some pretty amazing things at the time. You stuck a USB stick in and it just opened up the file manager. Whereas with most distros, you had to open up a terminal, you had to go and find what the USB stick was called, you had to manually mount it, you had to make sure you'd mounted it as read-write. And if you're not that familiar with how all that works in Linux, it was a pain. So it made it easier. And wireless networking, I mean, goodness sake, back in 2004, 2005, that was a bit of a dark art. But Ubuntu really worked on that from the word go. And it's got to the point where, for most people, unless you've got some obscure chipset, your wireless is just going to work out of the box. And so I have to give it credit that I think Ubuntu is largely responsible for putting the Linux desktop where it is today, in terms of how polished it's become and how easy it is to use. I don't know whether it's had much of an impact on market share, because who knows how much market share has grown since 2004. It might have grown, it might not have grown. There's such a small proportion of people use a Linux desktop anyway. It's hard to tell. And I know Linux is all over the servers, but I'm not particularly interested in that. I'm a desktop person. What I do know is Ubuntu has shaped the Linux desktop, and it set almost a standard that all other distros have kind of been forced to catch up with initially and meet. And what we have now is a situation in 2021 where the Linux desktop is really quite a polished thing. To the extent that I still get really annoyed when you hear criticisms about Linux when people are comparing it to Windows. You know, Windows is great because it does this, that, and the other, and Linux doesn't do that. Most of the time, those criticisms are purely about software that people use on Windows, and they're criticising Linux because that software doesn't run on Linux, which isn't a valid criticism as far as I'm concerned. If you expect your desktop to run exactly like Windows and you expect to run all your Windows software on it, well, use Windows. If you're prepared to look at a slightly different way of doing things and you're prepared to look at alternatives, Linux is as highly polished, if not more highly polished than Windows, and Ubuntu is up there. It really is. So I'm not an Ubuntu hater. I've used Ubuntu a lot. And I think I said all the way back last year that there's always been one desktop or laptop that has had a copy of Ubuntu on. That hasn't been the case for the last year because my personal preference is Arch. But nevertheless, you know, I have a lot of respect for Ubuntu. And I did install it on hardware actually this week on one of my laptops just to see how this worked out. So I'm a bit of a fan. I also disagree with the fact that people often say that Ubuntu is a newbie distro, it's for new starters. It isn't. It's a Debian-based distro, ultimately, and it's suitable for new starters, certainly, because it's easy to get yourself set up, but it's also just as appropriate for power users. It's about personal preference. My personal preference at the moment is for a rolling release distro, and my days of distro hopping are more or less done. I feel comfortable with Arch. I mean, never say never, but I've been with Arch for a few years now, and I'm probably going to stick with it. It doesn't mean that I dismiss other distros. It just means that I've found my comfort zone, really. I like a rolling release. I like the AUR. And for me, that just suits how I work, trying different window managers and all the rest of it. But if you want something that's quick and easy to get set up, it's a very capable distro, Ubuntu Mate will serve you well. So why am I looking at Mate rather than the standard GNOME or Budgie or XFCE or Plasma? Well, it's simple. Mate is my preferred desktop environment if I use a desktop environment. So this is going to be a biased review. I liked GNOME 2. I like Mate because it looks very similar and works in a very similar way to GNOME 2. I don't like GNOME 3. I appreciate that many people find it a great desktop, and that's good. It doesn't suit me, though. I would go for the Mate desktop every time, and I would like to see, ideally, the Mate desktop as the default in Ubuntu, but it's never going to be that way. But if you're a new user to Linux and you're looking at Ubuntu, don't think it's just the GNOME desktop. You have lots of options. So Ubuntu Mate, let's go to the combined screen. Let's have a look at the release notes and let's see what they've been doing. Okay, so you should see the Ubuntu Mate release notes now on the Ubuntu Mate web page, and there you go. Can you smell that? That's the smell of fresh paint with just a hint of cucumber. Okay, so what's been the main theme? Well, what it talks about here is some of the things that have been happening. We've got this. Something I haven't seen before, this Ayatana indicator. I believe that went into the last release. We'll have a look at that. I believe it's an interface for setting various preferences on your panel and what have you. So all good, like to see that. Yeah, and we've got a section there on Ayatana indicators. So, you know, show full username on the panel, etc., etc. Just makes things simple. Everybody likes a GUI. We've also, though, and the big thing here is Yaru. You may have seen the new icon set and the theme that Ubuntu Gnome has been using. And I will say I really like the Yaru icons. And as it says there, this is where most of the work has actually been invested this time round on the Mate desktop. So they're offering light and dark variants. They're offering different colours. GTK 2, 3 and 4 themes. Suru icons. LibreOffice Yaru Mate icon themes. Font contrast much improved. And websites on a dark mode at the operating system level. So these are all tweaks, and it's about just making the thing look nice. It's almost like the spit and polish, which I'd sort of expect in these development releases. I should perhaps say that this is a development release. It isn't a long-term support release, so you may get little bugs and things creeping in initially. Personally, I've never been an LTS person. I would install the LTS, but I would do an upgrade each time the new 6-monthly release came out. I never had a problem. If you absolutely need stability, it's probably a good idea to stay with the LTS, but I've never been bothered. I've always wanted the latest and greatest, which is, I suppose, why I like a rolling release now. So they've gone all out. Multiple colour variants of Yaru are available now, which is great. And Yaru snaps, it says soon Snapd will be able to automatically install snaps of themes that match your currently active theme. Let's not get into snaps. I haven't got a problem with them. I know many of the old guard don't like them. I have my own views about it, but they're not strong. As long as they work, as long as the package works, that's the main thing as far as I'm concerned. You've also, of course, got the ability in Mate, I used to have it through the tweak tool, where you can change how it looks. And the Mutiny layout was one of those, one of the layouts that was available, which was kind of a Unity look and feel. Apparently that's had work done on it, and it's had some of the bugs fixed. And there you go. Even Raspberry Pi images. Do you know? I might install this on my Raspberry Pi and see how it goes. Perhaps that would be a good idea, and I'll see what sort of desktop it results in. And perhaps see if I can set it up with... so I can show it in OBS. I don't know if that's possible. I'll have a think about how I can do that. But yeah, all good. So that's pretty much it. Lots of spit and polish. We've got the Yaru theme now. We've got this indicator GUI. Let's go and have a look. So here we have the Ubuntu Mate desktop 2104. And initially, everything looks pretty much as we would expect. It's very green. Of course, it's very green. I do notice since I last looked, though, we've got the Yaru, I think it's the Yaru icon set there. And I have to say, I do like the Yaru icon set. But let's sort of proceed through this. I'm going to have a quick look at the menu, but I don't expect much to have changed. This is the brisk menu, which I actually like. If I install Mate even on Arch, I will always install the brisk menu. So let's have a quick look to see what's there. Don't think I like the default theme here. It's a bit light for my tastes, but it's just a canvas that you can play with as much as you want. So we've got our accessories there, and you'll notice that Plank the dock is there by default. You've got a screenshot tool, you've got the Ubuntu Mate guide, and all the normal stuff. Software and updates, the software boutique, the software updater, and the Synaptic Package Manager. Now, I should say, after installing this, I did run an update. There wasn't that many updates, actually. The installation did a pretty good job. But I did install the Synaptic Package Manager simply because that is my preferred package manager on Debian-based systems. On graphics, we've got the Mate Viewer and Shotwell. I would, as a standard course, probably install the GIMP as well. You've got Firefox and Transmission. You've got the LibreOffice suite, your standard preferences menu, sound and video, Webcamoid, which I believe has taken over from Cheese as the default. Okay, that's fine. I'm in VirtualBox, so I haven't got a webcam to test it. And you've got Rhythmbox and Celluloid there, so a music player and a media player, a video player. Then you've got your Kaha, or however you pronounce it, and your system monitor and your Mate terminal. I'll tell you what I'll do right from the beginning. Let's just run htop. I believe this is installed by default. And yes, it is. And it's showing 707 megs. It's not terrible. I mean, in these days where most people have 8 or 16 gigs as a minimum, 707 megs isn't bad. Certainly on a default base on an Arch system, I would expect to see that 150, 200 meg lower. But hey, you know, you pay for all the customization and the spit and polish and all the bits and pieces, and you get what you get. System tools, yeah, we've just gone through. And then, of course, universal access. So a little bit like Accessible Coconut, if you want to enable Orca, the screen reader, and the onboard keyboard, and Magnus, which will magnify the screen, you can do all that. So nothing to see here, really, is essentially what I'm saying. So you get this main menu, the welcome screen, when you first boot into Ubuntu Mate. I've saved you from having to watch me install it, because installing Ubuntu from a live disk these days is just so simple that once you've seen it so many times. It's the Ubiquity installer, and it's just a case of next. And it was flawless. I expected it to be flawless, and it was. You don't need any special knowledge to install Ubuntu. It really is straightforward and simple. So, it's green. All Mate desktops seem to be green, even if they're a standard non-customized version. So let's just work our way through this welcome screen for a retrospective future. Scroll down. It tells you a little bit about the system, what is Ubuntu Mate, what is the desktop environment, a little bit about how it's open source, etc. What are the features? Okay, so it's the PR stuff, built-in security, it can do this, that, and the other. What are the standard apps? To be honest, these are the sort of things that you see when you're installing it. You know, it prompts you with various slides to let you know. So let's click Getting Started, which should take us to where we need to be. So updates and extras, so you can click on here straight away. What does that actually show? I did it through the command line, which is my preference, but hey-ho, you've got the software updater there. Additional codecs, which I installed during the installation because it gives you the option, which is nice. Blu-ray and DVD playback support is already done. You can change the screensavers, you can change the appearance, you can add additional community wallpapers. Great. It's all there. There are links to the community, which is the forum and social networks. And, of course, you can also open up the software boutique, which I think is your snaps. I'm just going to make this bigger. I think these are snaps. I mean, Ubuntu is heavy on snaps. Personally, if it works, it works. I've talked about flat packs and snaps in the past. There's a lot of arguments. Are they good? Are they bad? I can understand the reasons why Ubuntu has gone towards snaps rather than standard deb packages, although it still uses a bit of both. But they do make life simple, and as far as I'm concerned, as long as they work, they work. And you can happily play along looking at all the different software categories here. Now, this is where it gets interesting, I think, the colour selection. So we get to the colour selection, and the standard is this very green Yaru Mate. But you have other colours that you can choose. Now, what I have discovered is that these colours aren't installed by default, so I had to go through and I've actually installed the blue. And if you install this on hardware, you simply click apply, and it should change everything to blue. This wasn't working for me and isn't working for me on VirtualBox. However, it worked a treat on real hardware, and it changed the Yaru icons, and it changed the wallpaper to a blue icon. And I watched a video by PCTLC earlier, and he had the same problem. So it's a VirtualBox issue, that, and normally it works great. However, I can still do it manually. I can go into the standard appearance categories that are in the control panel. I can customize it. I've installed the Aqua, the blue. So if I go to the Aqua Light, and I just choose that, and then I go to the icons and I choose the Aqua Light, all good. We now have the blue tinged Yaru icons, which I really like. And I'm hoping if I go to change desktop background, I now have the blue Yaru there. Yeah, and there we go. So on VirtualBox, I'm having to go through a few extra steps, but it is a VirtualBox issue only. So bit annoying, but it's not an Ubuntu problem. That's a VirtualBox problem. So you can have the aqua, brown, pink, red, yellow, whatever. You also get the option to have a light or a dark theme. Now, as you can see, everything is very light at the moment. Personally, I prefer a dark theme. I'm not sure if this will work in VirtualBox, but I'm going to hit apply. And indeed it has. And absolutely, it's picked the Yaru dark theme. I'm just wondering, actually, there was in the control center when I went into appearance, I did notice that there was some Yaru Aqua Dark. It's automatically changed the controls from Aqua Dark, and it's changed the icons to Aqua Dark as well. So, I mean, whatever color scheme that you want, you can instantly change it. I think that is really good. And if you want to change the theme at any time by clicking on appearance, you can. It takes you to the standard control panel, and we've already got a fair few things there. And some icon sets already, but easy enough to install more icon sets. So I'm quite impressed at that. You've always been able to change the colour of Ubuntu Mate, but you had to go through a few steps. And on hardware now, if you just click a button, you don't like green, you prefer blue, or you prefer the traditional sludge brown, well, off you go, you can change it. What we also have here is, of course, the desktop layouts. This is possibly one of the selling points for many people with Mate, that a lot of people say kind of it's old-fashioned, it looks as it looks, and yeah, I know it's sort of old-fashioned, it's very GNOME 2 style, and that's what attracts me, to be honest. I like the GNOME 2 style. But you can change it pretty easily. So if I go for Mutiny, which gives you, I think, a Unity look and feel, Let me just click on that button. Yeah. And there we have the Unity look and feel. Now, I think this is Plank now, so if I just right-click on that, I should be able to get to Preferences. And you can see that I've actually got a theme drop-down box there, and I can change it to what I like. I can go for, well, Mutiny Dark. I can go for Straightforward Transparent. Very nice. I believe these icons are animated if you're using them on hardware. Or I could go for a light theme if I wanted. The Aqua or Ubuntu Mate. I'm not so sure that looks good. Let's stick with Mutiny Dark. Let's change it again. Let's have a look at something else. So the Redmond theme, which is meant to give it a Windows feel. So let's see what that's resulted in. And that's obviously moved the bottom bar down here. This is the actual panel, so this isn't Plank. And if you like that very traditional Windows feel, well, fill your boots. And then we have the Cupertino, which is the Mac-esque look, once again using the Plank dock. So let's just give it a quick go and see what it looks like. Okay, oh, I see it's moved my minimize and maximize buttons over to the other side. And there you have the Plank dock. And as always, right-click, and you can bring up, the appearance, its behavior, the docklets, etc., etc. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. Let's go back to the familiar for the rest of this, just so we know what we're doing. And go back to the desktop layout. So that's your welcome screen. You're probably only going to use this the once, but I like the fact that for new users specifically, it gives you a chance to play and to get the desktop looking how you want. Let's have a quick look in the control center, which of course you can use every time to play to your heart's content. So we've looked at the software boutique. I've installed Synaptic Package Manager. You've got your driver dialog there that you can launch, which is searching for available drivers. I don't particularly expect to find much here. It's using the VirtualBox guest service, so that's absolutely fine. You've got your discs, your displays, very easy to set the resolution. It automatically set itself to 1920 by 1080, which I thought was great. You've got all of your keyboard shortcuts here. I've got a version of Mate on this machine, actually, which I've modified to the nth degree. And I've tried to turn it also almost into a tiling window manager. And I've created all of my custom keyboard shortcuts there. And I can pretty much control the desktop by the keyboard if I want to. So have a play. Sound, time and date. What else have we got here? Advanced network configuration, your appearance. Dead easy to do this. You've got some pre-configured themes there. You've then got this indicator menu, which is something new for me. I know it came out in the last version, 2010, but I didn't look at 2010. And so, what do they call it? Ayatana. So you can pick here what's showing on the panel, full username on the panel, remove the logout item from the menu, suppress the logout, restart and shut down confirmation menu, etc., etc. Date and time, what you're going to show on the panel, show the year, show the month and date. Don't know if it changes straight away. Yes, it does. Show the year. The year isn't showing at the moment, but presumably would on a reboot. Show the number of seconds on the panel. It's showing that as well. Sound. Allow setting the volume to above 100% and enable on logon. Power. Show the percentage on the panel. So obviously if you've got a battery. Messages. Currently grayed out for me. I've got nothing set up. Bluetooth, there isn't any on this. Notifications, maximum number for Spotify, Network Manager, Mate Tweak, etc. And keyboard, enable the keyboard icon on startup. So, hey, there's not a lot more to say about it. There are some downsides, though, to using an Ubuntu-based distro. And I have to say that the downsides aren't particularly going to affect most people. They affect me. And the downsides for me, who is someone who likes playing with window managers, is not all window managers are available in the repositories. I like Xmonad, I like Qtile, and I like LeftWM. Xmonad is in the repos, LeftWM and Qtile isn't. That doesn't mean that you can't install it. You can install Qtile through a pip install, and you would use Rust's own package manager to install LeftWM. So there are ways around it, but it isn't as convenient. And personally, I prefer a rolling release distro. Nevertheless, those aren't issues that are going to affect the majority of users. So, quick look-see, but I think it's another thumbs up. Let's go and have a chat. Right, so that's Ubuntu Mate, the Hirsute Hippo. I can't think of anything bad to say about it, so I'm not going to say anything bad. I think it's a really nice desktop, and you just get the impression that the spit and polish is just a little bit more of it is added each time. And it's certainly a great polished desktop. My only issue, and probably the reason that I don't use it, is I prefer to start from scratch and build up the look and feel of a desktop myself. I like easy installation of window managers from the repos, and those things aren't quite as straightforward in Ubuntu, but it is what it is, and it's certainly up there. In fact, although if you go to Distro Watch and their rankings, mean very little, you've got MX Linux right at the top, and there is no way MX Linux is the most popular distro. Without a shadow of, a doubt, I would go all out and say the most popular distro in the world is Ubuntu. It's been around now for 17 years. People who've never even heard the word Linux have heard the term Ubuntu and know what it is. And it just keeps getting better and better and more polished. If you've never used Linux before, it's certainly up there in the top 2 or 3 distros to try. I won't use, the description that it's the best distro you can get, because there's no such thing. It's all about personal preference. But for me, it's one of the top. It's one of the top. And the Mate desktop, for me, and again, this is entirely subjective, remains one of the best, if not the best, for a desktop environment. I know we've got the likes of Budgie that's coming on. I do like XFCE as well, but there's just something about Mate that takes the edge as far as I'm concerned. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little bit... I like to look at, unusual distros quite a lot, and this is a bit more mainstream than my usual. So please come and join me on the Facebook group. I dropped the little library thing today because I don't know what's happening with library, so we'll see what comes out of that. If you want to join me on library and watch on that, or Odyssey, the app, well, I'm there anyway. I auto-sync my stuff over. And of course, I would like to, as normal, say thank you to all of my my Patreon supporters: Robert Boudreau, Gary, Aristotelis, Stormpick, Stephen, Mike Long, David, Richard, Ty, Forrest, Patrick, Glenn, Magnus, Skipper, John M, and David Van Tongaloo. Guys, thank you so much for continuing to support me. It is really, a great help. And if you'd like to join the Patreon, well, you'll find the links down in the notes below the video. If you'd like to buy me a pint, go to my website and you can chuck us a £5 or something. No pressure, you don't have to. This is a hobby, it's not my income, but it certainly helps with new hardware and the like. So guys, hopefully we get a bit of nice weather this week. Things are booking up. We've got a bank holiday weekend here in the UK, and I'm really looking forward to having a three-day weekend, and let's just hope the weather holds out. But that's it for now. See you next week.